Om Prithvi Shantirantariksha Shantir Dyav Shantir Disha Shantiravantara Disha Shantiragni Shantir Vayu Shantiraditya Shantir Chandrama Shantir Nakshatrani Shantirapa Shantiroshadaya Shantir Vanaspataya Shantir Gau Shantiraja Shantirashva Shantir Purusha Shantir Brahma Shantir Brahmana Shantir Shantireva Shanti Shantir Me Astu Shantihi. May there be peace on earth and in the sky. May there be peace in the water and in all directions. May there be peace in the plants, in the trees, and in animals. May there be peace in the hearts of all beings. May there be peace in everyone and in everything. Sarvetra Sukhina Santu, Sarve Santu Niramayaha, Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu, Ma Kaschit Dukha Bhag Bhavet, Sarvastaratu Durgani, Sarvo Bhadrani Pashyatu, Sarvas Sadbuddhimapnotu, Sarvas Sarvatra Nandatu. May all be happy and healthy. May all see what is good, and may no one experience misery. May all overcome their obstacles and acquire good tendencies. May people everywhere find joy and fulfillment. Let us now spend some time touching the center of peace and joy in our hearts. A good way to begin the practice is to withdraw the scattered energies of the mind and bring them to rest on one point. That point can be our own breathing. Let us therefore practice breathing with awareness. As we breathe in, let us visualize that our body and mind are being filled with love, strength, and compassion. And as we breathe out, let us release all the stress, anxiety, and exhaustion in the body and mind. Let us practice this way for a while. Let us now turn our attention to the region of our heart. Although God is present everywhere and in everyone, the divine presence can be felt most clearly in our own hearts. We can meditate in any way we have been taught. To remain focused, we can take the help of a short mental prayer or a mantra or a divine name. Let us now spend some time dwelling on the presence of God in our hearts. Om Asatoma Satkamaya Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya Aviravirmayeti Rudrayate Dakshinam Mukham Te Namam Pahi Nityam. May the Divine lead us from the unreal to the real, from darkness to light, from death to immortality. May the Divine Consciousness fill our hearts and protect us. We saw last time the first two sutras in this text. We saw in the first sutra how there is a reference to the requirements for the study. Who is fit to undertake the study? So the kind of questions we need to ask ourselves when we undertake any new study. And in the second sutra, we saw that Narada said that bhakti is supreme love toward God. And in that context, we saw the different kinds of love, how the love for God can be distinguished from the other loves that we have in life, and how this love for the divine, for the spiritual ideal, is supreme, that there is nothing else that can come anywhere close to it. It's incomparable. Now today we'll take up Sutra 3 and 4. Now these sutras, these 3 and 4, give what in Sanskrit is sometimes called Tatastha Lakshana. Lakshana means attributes or characteristics. And Tatastha means experiential. That what happens to a person who acquires this supreme love for God. So there are two ways of giving the characteristics of a thing. One is the characteristics of the thing itself. And the second is what happens, what are the kind of effect that thing produces on someone else. So what these two verses will show now is what happens when that supreme love for God enters into the heart of a person. Let's do Sutra 3. That will be on page 30 of your books. Amrita Swarupacha. This devotion is also of the nature of immortality. As you can see, as I mentioned in the beginning, sutras are very concise, terse comments. So instead of the statement saying that bhakti is also of the nature of Amrita, it just says, the second verse, the second aphorism said, bhakti has been described as the supreme love towards God. And this is, it's also of the nature of immortality. It doesn't kind of use that whole phrase again to kind of keep the sutra as compact as possible. So what is this? Nature of immortality. One thing is very clear, that whatever other loves that we have in life are directed towards objects which are perishable, objects which have a certain form, a certain name. And names and forms don't last. In fact, one of the nature, the essential characteristics of all material entities is that they have a beginning and they have end. And so composition, if composition is different particles or entities coming together and you compose something, in fact, the body, you could say, is a composition of material particles or compositions of cells, if you look at it in biological terms. Now, all these different cells or material particles or atoms or molecules, you can look at it whichever way you want, all these are coming together, and because they are staying together for a certain amount of time, they acquire a certain form. How long will these particles? As long as the force that holds them together remains. Once that force goes away, then the particles will get dissipated. Now, in physical and chemical terms, you can describe those forces in different ways. Because of course, atoms and molecules, what are the things that binds one molecule with another, one atom with another? So this force can be described in the language of material sciences, but it can also be described through forces which are not, as at least so far, been measurable by the kind of instruments material science has developed. And that would be prana. Right? So prana is a force that holds these material particles together. And when prana, life force, that which keeps this body alive. So this force then, when it leaves the body, these particles then, you'll see, will disintegrate. And that's what we mean when we say dust. It will return to dust. It will return to a heap of ashes. So, wherever, if our love is directed to an entity which has a form or which has a name associated with it, since the name and form will not last forever, this love also is not immortal because it will end. Now, this needs a little bit of clarification. For instance, when the memory, when we love people, people as people will not last forever. That's why we are mortal beings. Now we go, but the memory remains. So if I love my parents, my family, so they are people. As people, they don't remain eternally, but that doesn't necessarily mean that my love for them disappears when they die. But the love that was directed to a specific person, as long as that person remains either externally or in my mind, the love will remain. But when that presence of that entity, doesn't necessarily have to be a person, could be even an object. People love their gadgets. So your love for your gadget will remain as long as you don't replace it with a better gadget. So it's a little bit like that. So I mention all this to show that the nature of immortality, the word immortality here, amrita, has to be taken with great seriousness. That is, all other love directed towards any entity other than God will not last forever. It will have an end because the entity itself is not eternal. So the only presence that will never ever go away is the presence of God. And therefore, the love for God, love associated with God, is always immortal or eternal. So that is the idea here, that to distinguishing the experience of love that all of us have in life, how that love differs from the love that exists between a devotee and God. One, bhakti is the supreme love, and second, that it is immortal. Let's look at verse number 4. Yal labdhva puman siddho bhavati amruto bhavati tripto bhavati, by attaining which the devotee's objects are fulfilled, he becomes immortal and becomes ever satisfied. So several important points here. Yal labdhva, attaining which. Now, although it's been translated as attaining, it's more, labdhva means having received. Now this is important, which is to say that these things are not, that's why the translation attaining might give the idea that that's what the bhakta attains through effort. But the idea here is that that is something the bhakta receives through God's grace. So in the path of devotion, all of these things that a devotee experiences are not seen as a result of a great effort done by a devotee. All that the spiritual seeker needs to do okay, I'm going to qualify this statement, but let me complete it first. All that the devotee will do is to love God. That's it. There's nothing else to be done. Just love God. And as a result of that love, through God's grace then, all these things will occur. Person becomes fulfilled, immortal, and ever satisfied. Now, that qualification of the statement. I said all that a devotee has to do is to love God. Now, this is the question. Is love an activity that can be consciously started at will? And probably that never happens like that. You can't say, oh, from tomorrow onwards, I'm going to start loving that thing. It just never happens. Love is something that happens. It is not something you can will it. And it's not something you can stop it either. None of these things are in our hands in some ways. And that's why sometimes you can see how language develops. And normally, when we use the word love in common conversation, people speak about falling in love. The use of the verb falling is a little ominous there. Why falling? We know, in other times, when you say, when you fall, you are injured, you are hurt. So falling in love is not really a very happy usage in some ways. But well, that's how the language has developed. I don't know how the word falling came along with it. But love, as we have seen, whatever loves that we have experienced in life so far, we will see that it was never a very conscious activity. It's something that either happens or it doesn't happen. And so what does it mean then to say that a devotee should love God? And what the path of bhakti says is that what we can do, what a devotee should do, is eliminate all hatred from the heart, because hatred is opposite to love. Love is already within our heart. Love is not something to be kind of not floating around somewhere that I need to get it and then project it. It's not like love is already there within us. What is preventing the manifestation of that love is hatred, is misunderstanding, its lack of clarity. All of these things are preventing that expression of love. So, if a spiritual seeker tries to remove these obstacles, and how do we acquire clarity? We know that a lot of confusion, a lot of lack of clarity occurs because the mind is distracted. We are not sure, like, what is it that I want in life? Sometimes I get to meet several young people, both on campuses as well as at the center. And sometimes when I ask them, well, what is it that you want in life? What is, and I know this is out of the blue. Someone asks you, what is that you want in life? We may not right away have an answer, but I think it's something that we can ask ourselves. Clearly, there are things we do in life. We have something that we are studying, something that we are working toward. We have some long or short-term plans ahead of us. So clearly, all of these things that we have are done with some intent, some motivation. And so it's not a completely unreasonable question to say, what do you want in life? And whatever it is that you're doing now, whichever way you're thinking now, is that something that will give you whatever it is that you want? And it's a simple thing, to have some clarity about what I want in life, and then looking at my present thoughts, actions, and say, if I continue to do what I'm doing now, if I continue to think the way I'm thinking now, will it take me anywhere nearer to whatever it is that I'm seeking? It's as simple as that. But in order to do this, we must have some idea. It may not be a very clear idea, even if it's a hazy idea, but what do I really want? And what I'm doing now? And what I should do going forward in order to go nearer to the goal. It's like when you drive to some place. When you want to go somewhere, you should know where you are right now. You should know where you want to go, and then the GPS will take care of the rest. But even GPS can't help me if I don't know where I am right now. Well, the GPS will take care of that also. So that's what will bring clarity. So clarity needs a kind of an ideal or a goal ahead of us. When that is there, and we try to remove all misconceptions, prejudices, biases that we have, what scripture says this: a lot of antipathy that people have, some people have, about religion, about God. Some people who see themselves as atheists or agnostics or humanists. A lot of allergy to religion or God that they have is according to people who practice spiritual life, is that they lack clarity. That if only they could keep aside for a while their prejudices and biases, then, and when they encounter the reality of God as someone just filled with love, they will not be able to stop themselves from loving God. And of course, I imagine that they would probably say the same thing about spiritual people, that these people are already biased in favor of something. So this debate will continue, but this is what loving someone means. That if the obstacles are removed, love will automatically come. So when that love comes as an act of God's grace, the person then becomes Puman is a Sanskrit word, although the translation is very gender specific, just says he becomes. The word Puman itself simply means a person. It's not referring specifically to a man or a woman. It means really any living being. In fact, not even limited to human beings, according to some thinkers. Because there are stories in Indian mythology how even animals, because of the result of their past impressions, can show spiritual tendencies. Again, this is a debatable issue, but there is a school of thought which doesn't limit the love for God only to human beings. So siddho bhavati, siddha, translated here as being fulfilled. Now siddha can be translated in many different ways. It's actually one of a triad. So it's called sadhya, that which is to be attained, and sadhana. Sadhana means the spiritual practice. And when a spiritual practice gives me the object of attainment, then I become siddha. So by saying that such a person becomes siddha means this devotee, this bhakta, has reached the goal. And the goal, as we have seen in the first two aphorisms, is simply dwelling in this, immersed in this love of God. Sri Ramakrishna once asked Swami Vivekananda, when he was a youngster, he said that God is the ocean of immortality. How would you go and drink of this immortal nectar of the divine? And then Ramakrishna said, imagine yourself to be, say, this nectar of this immortality is filled in a cup, and you are a little fly sitting on the edge of the cup. And how would you taste it? And Vivekananda was then an 18 or 19-year-old in age. He said, well, pragmatically, he said, well, I will kind of sit on the edge and kind of stretch out my neck and try to get some sip of that great nectar. And then Ramakrishna said, why? Why don't you just jump into it? And he said, well, if I jump into it, I'll get drowned. And then Ramakrishna said, well, getting drowned in this ocean of immortality, you won't die. It's an ocean of immortality. So you will actually be immortal. So that's essentially what the bhakta wants. So siddha here means being fulfilled, really means that one is completely immersed in the love of God, which by nature itself is immortal, as we saw in the second aphorism. Amrito bhavati becomes immortal. So once we become fulfilled, once the devotee becomes fulfilled, then the devotee becomes immortal. Now mortality, we feel we are mortal beings because we are encased in these material coverings. So what is mortal, what ends are these coverings, not me. But I feel I am mortal because I feel I am one of this. So what dies is the body. What has ups and downs is the mind. But because I think I have become one with these, therefore the death of the body feels like my death. The ups and downs of the mind feels to be my own ups and downs. So when a devotee becomes immortal means this bhakta realizes that these external coverings are not the real me. And tripto bhavati becomes ever satisfied. Now, satisfaction comes from desirelessness. As long as we feel unfulfilled in some way, as long as we feel, oh, this is something I would like to have, but I don't have it yet, I cannot never say I'm satisfied. Well, most of us are satisfied, but there is always pockets of dissatisfaction in our heart. Dissatisfaction with 100 different things. Now, as long as those dissatisfactions are there, we cannot say that we have become completely fulfilled. Now, in the case of a person who has attained the supreme love for God, such a person goes beyond all dissatisfactions. Such a person then feels completely satisfied. It's a little bit like if you had a really hearty, heavy meal of something that you truly enjoy eating, then at the end of it, for a while, you are satisfied, at least as far as eating is concerned. Immediately after that, if someone were to bring you more food, you will say, no, I don't need it. You will not be tempted to eat more if you have already had your complete fill. Now, that's usually limited to eating. Now, if the same thing can happen with regard to everything in life, that no matter what comes before us, I can say, no, I don't need it. So that is used, the word that is used in Sanskrit for that is called purna, the wholeness. And so one of the effects of Maya, one of the effects of ignorance is that I feel somehow incomplete. So, since ignorance is what makes impossible seem possible, I, who am truly Purna, full, because of ignorance, I suddenly feel, oh, I'm not full. It's a little bit like a millionaire going to sleep. Now, you can't say if a millionaire goes to sleep, in all his or her dreams, the person will be always a millionaire. Not necessary. You could be a very wealthy person, but in your dream, you suddenly find you have become penniless. Now, that pennilessness in your dream is not real, because really you are wealthy. But as long as you're dreaming, that's become the reality to you. And that will not be over until your dream breaks and you wake up and you find that you are wealthy again. Or it could be the opposite. Maybe I am penniless and in my dream I become a wealthy person. Then I wouldn't want the dream to end either. Something like that had happened to us. That this infinite being, every one of us is that infinite being. And we are Purna, we are whole, we don't lack anything, we are complete. And then we fell asleep. And in the dream now, every one of us has become this one mortal human being, unfulfilled in many ways, feeling that sense of incompleteness. And all the things that we desire in life, all the things that we wish to possess in life, is nothing but the effort on our part to somehow complete ourselves. And the kind of consumeristic society in which we live, that's the primary job. On all advertisements really, what are they really trying to make us feel is that you better get this product. If you don't get this, your life is incomplete in some way. And then if you're kind of bombarded with this idea day in and day out through your newspaper, through television, through social media, through conversation, everyone is trying to you got to have this. Without this, life will be impossible. And then slowly we start believing in it. In fact, whole of this, most businesses while closed down, if everyone realizes, I don't really need those things. And so all the thriving of the economy and all of that is based on this simple idea that we keep thinking, I need it. So tripto bhavati, being satisfied means you know that I don't need it. Now again, that doesn't necessarily mean that, if you become enlightened, then you will not, you don't need to eat, you don't need to sleep. In a way, yes, but you might still see, and we have seen in history, we do see in contemporary times, enlightened people do eat, they do sleep. But they know that it's not they don't do it with the idea, I need it, I'm eating it. That's why the grace before meals that we say at the Vedanta centers, Brahmarpanam Brahmahavi, is nothing but a recognition. At least the goal that we are striving for is that the food that is eaten and then the one who is eating and the act of eating, they are all divine. So you're not seeing it as, I'm hungry and I need to do this. So if we chant that verse every time before meals, we are trying to remind ourselves that this is something I'm not doing out of desire or a need, but it's another way, another opportunity for me to recognize that everything is filled with divine. So being ever satisfied, the tripta means that satisfaction will come when desires will go from the heart. And that is then, this idea is carried forward in the next sutra on page 43. Yat prapya Na kinchit vanchati, na shochati, na dveshti, na ramate, notsahi bhavati. After obtaining which, the devotee does not desire anything else, does not grieve, does not hate anything, does not enjoy anything else, and does not feel encouraged to do anything else. So let's take this up one by one. Yat prapya. Prapya means having received it. Na kinchit vanchati. The devotee does not desire anything. We already seen where and how desire springs from. Now, desirelessness will therefore come from several things. One is, the more we become aware of the fleeting nature of everything, the more we become aware of impermanence, an idea that the Buddha stressed so much, how everything is transient. That does help in, at the very least, tamping down our desire for something. If you want something badly and you just pause rather than just impulsively just going and buying it, you just stop and say, how long will this last? You say, oh, this gives me great joy, so I'm just going to go. And you say, well, yeah, sure, it'll give me joy. How long does my joy last? And what comes after the joy? Now, there are times in life we do things and they seem to bring us great joy and pleasure, but oftentimes, not always, but oftentimes, after that moment is past, that moment of great enjoyment is past, also comes either a regret. It's like, oh, I was too greedy. I probably shouldn't have gone ahead and eaten so much. Although while eating, it just seemed very great. But now I'm in trouble. Sometimes people, when they overeat, you see, as I sometimes say, when we eat food that we enjoy eating, it's essentially, it's probably a 4 or 6 inches of road it travels. From the point you put in your mouth, as long as it's in your tongue, that's the time you're getting the taste. Once your food has passed this portion, that's it. After that, it's just hard work, digesting all that. So if you kind of think, well, this is a great food, I enjoy eating it, but this enjoyment is only for 4 or 5 inches. After that, it's work. If we remember that, we will still eat. I'm not saying we shouldn't eat the kind of food that we like, but we'll be a little bit more realistic about how much I need to eat, recognizing the work. It's a little bit like when you're going for a walk, and say it's a beautiful evening, there's nice breeze, and you're walking along a river, and you're enjoying the walk. So I think it's wonderful. Walking is great. But the moment you start walking, if you remember that all the distance you go, you still have to come back, then you will be little measured about how long you will go, right? Awareness of that. It's like one person was trying for some exercise and weight reduction. So his doctor said, you need to walk 5 miles every day. And the person said, yes, I'll do it. And so report to me after 10 days how you feel. So after 10 days, he got a call from the patient and said, I really feel great. Your advice was perfect. I'm walking 5 miles every day, but I have only one problem. The doctor said, what? Now, how do I go back home? I'm already 50 miles away from my home. So clearly, when we know that when we have to go somewhere, we also need to know we have to return. In the same way, when we eat something, no matter how much we are enjoying it, if we remember that all of this food will need to be digested, we will have some control over the desire. So that's one thing, remembering the transient nature of things. A second is the withdrawal of our intention. And I've referred to this several times before. It is this: desire itself cannot be stopped right away. Desire is something most desires that come in the heart, they just come. It's like love that springs in the heart, or desire springs in the heart. It doesn't come out of the blue. In order for a desire to come, it comes from the samskaras, the mental impressions in the subconscious part of our mind. Now, those impressions, when they are triggered, they are activated or stimulated by some external cause or an internal memory. So it's like you're passing by Starbucks. So seeing Starbucks there or getting the aroma of the coffee, that's a stimulus that provides this coffee impression in my mind to produce the desire. Say, oh, I would like to have coffee. Now because you already have that coffee impression, you cannot really stop that desire. That desire is going to come. Where you do have control is whether you should act upon that desire or not. So we know there are so many desires spring in our heart all the time. We don't always act upon each and every desire. And so when a desire comes in the heart, if I look at the desire and say, is it something that I should give into or not? And as I said, for spiritual seekers, the best test would be, not all desires are bad. Well, desire for God realization is also desire. So desires can be great. Desire to be a good, honest person is a desire. A desire to go and help people in need, that's a desire. These are good desires. So when a desire springs in the heart, I need to ask myself, will it make me stronger in some way? Either physically, mentally, morally, emotionally, spiritually. If it is going to take me in some way closer to my goal, if it's going to somehow make me a better human being, say yes to the desire. Then that desire gets transformed into intention. And then intention will lead to action. Intention in Sanskrit is called sankalpa. So desire is vasana. When caught by my willpower, it becomes a sankalpa, intention, and then it gets transformed. Then I actually walk into Starbucks and order a cup of coffee. So that leads to then action. Now, if I find a certain desire comes and I feel, no, this is not good for me, this is somehow will hurt me in some way, then I should say no to it. So that's the second way of getting our desires under control. First, recognizing that everything is transitory, nothing lasts forever. Second, looking at the desires, the small and big desires that come in the heart, ask myself whether this is good for me or not good for me, and then decide whether to act upon them or not act upon them. And third is just opening our heart to God's grace. And the more the ego gets out of the way, the more it's easier for God's grace to act within it. And it's through God's grace then that all these desires will ultimately be burnt. So as long as the impressions are in the heart, the desires will come. Now these mental impressions have to be removed. Removing them is not always easy. One of the reasons we practice all the yogas is that every yoga has a way of eliminating these impressions. Through the path of Jnana Yoga, these impressions are reduced to ashes, as the Gita says, because the fire of knowledge reduces all these impressions to ashes. Then one becomes desireless, because the impression themselves, the source of all desires is removed. In the path of Bhakti Yoga, it's God's grace that burns away all these desires. And so on. So there are these different ways it can be done. So that's the third cause, third way that desirelessness can come. And finally, the awareness, and this is important, awareness of God's presence. For a spiritual seeker, the best protection a spiritual seeker will have to be conscious of the kind of thoughts that we think, the kind of actions that we do, if we remember that God is always by my side. We know oftentimes that when we are in the presence of somebody else, there is already a check on us. We know that, well, I am being watched. I really cannot do what I want. That's why when people are alone, when they feel that now I'm by myself, then they just feel like, well, now I can do what I want because nobody is watching me. Now, if for a devotee, for a bhakta, to remember, there's never going to be a time when no one is watching me, because God is omnipresent. God is everywhere. If God is everywhere, I cannot go anywhere where I'm alone. I'm never alone. So on one side, it can be extremely energizing. Then I know I will never be alone in life. That no matter where I am, God is always there by my side. So it can be a source of tremendous strength. It can also make a bhakta very alert that I cannot be careless in my thoughts, words, and actions because I am being watched. Just like an obedient child will be very careful when in the presence of his or her parents. Oh, my mom and dad are watching, so I really can't do what I want. So, well, a divine mom and a divine dad is always watching. So this awareness that I am being watched is a great protection, and that also then gives us a chance to keep our impulses under control. And as I want to stress, I'm not suggesting that all of our impulses and desires are bad. That's not what I'm saying. Many of our impulses and desires are actually good. They are helpful for us. But some of them are not. All that we need is to find ways to be vigilant, to make sure that going forward, the thoughts that we think, the words that we speak, the actions that we do, go to make us stronger, take us nearer to God, will not make us forget our spiritual ideal. That's how a devotee of God thinks. So we'll stop here today, and then next week when we meet, we'll look at these other things about what does not grieving, what does not hating anything, and so on. What are the implications of these other effects that take place in a devotee's life? If you have any thoughts, ideas, questions?
Swamiji, in progress towards our material goals, it's quite easy for us to see progress towards material goals. What are some ways we can see progress towards spiritual goals?
Among the things that we can see clearly is over a period of time, if we look back at ourselves, an honest self-assessment, we will be able to know that we are making progress. But we have to be completely honest with ourselves. To then ask myself the question, how was I as a person 2 years ago or 5 years ago? And how am I today? Do I find myself a better person in some way? And a better person is still a better might seem a very vague term. But things like, for instance, am I able to handle the ups and downs in life in a better way, in a mature way? How often do I do things actuated by my own selfish interest, and how often am I able to think of others, and so on. So these are, everyone can derive their own criteria for this, but I think every thinking person will know deep down in their heart. Provided there has been some amount of self-examination of their lives, it's not very difficult to know which way and in what direction our life is going. But what's necessary is complete honesty with oneself. Otherwise, it's kind of easy. You see, deceiving others is bad, but deceiving oneself is terrible. It's a little bit like saying, I don't need to go and clean my basement or garage. God, I think it's great. It's nice. No, it's not nice. But then I know if I go and see and I find so much needs to be done, if I at least acknowledge that a lot of work needs to be done, there is a chance that in some time I might go and do it, or at least recognize that I am not doing it. But then to just tell myself it's already fine, then there is no hope. And therefore, for a spiritual seeker, the primary requirement is brutal honesty with yourself. You don't have to go and advertise what you see inside to others. That can be completely your own private observation. But you can be completely honest with yourself. And then it's possible to know whether we are making progress or not.
Swamiji, when you said about loving God, is that means loving yourself? Because loving God means I have to project somebody outside of me, and which is infinite. I don't know. I believe there is a God. So how I explain myself that yes, I do love God, but I don't see God?
Yes, I think we will not be able to love God if we don't love ourselves. I think all love, all kinds of love, proceed from love for oneself first. I mean, if loving anyone brings me only pain, I wouldn't love anyone. Because love kind of is satisfying in many ways, even in the process, before it has reached that supreme level, that's why I love. And so, but for a devotee, when a devotee loves God, when a bhakta loves God, that time the bhakta is not saying, well, I'm really loving myself. Unless you kind of go in a very philosophical way, well, my true self is the same as God, and so on. But primarily, in the initial stages of, that could be the ultimate experience of a bhakta, when one experiences that oneness with God. But when love for God springs in the heart, it's almost always you're loving some being outside of yourself. Later on, when that love matures and becomes intensified, then you might have other experiences, whether that object of your love is really outside or it's inside, and how close are you to that. That will vary, but no one really begins with that I'm truly loving myself, I think. Yeah. Because the idea of the self, myself, the idea of the self is still not very clear. Because if I'm already enlightened, then there is nothing. But if I'm not enlightened, I don't know what my true self is. Yeah. Yeah.
How does one cultivate self-love?
Cultivate self-love? It's a good subject. We are going to come to that later on. All that I'll mention today is that we need to distinguish self-love from love for the self. Because self-love, at least the way the phrase gets used usually, is a form of narcissism. But love for the self, seeing self as the Atman, is different from self-love. But we'll discuss more about it in the coming weeks. Yeah. Philip? Yeah.
Thank you, Maharaj. I have a question about, it's kind of tricky, about the relationship between God, correctly understood, say, the Vedantin understanding of God, and the world of Maya. It seems that we are often encouraged to, like, when we think about these things, to overcome Maya. So we, the vairagya implies that we sort of, our senses withdraw from the world. Yet there are some traditions of thinking which see in this world certain things that seem kind of eternal. They seem like beauty or truth, the good, the true, and the beautiful, And it seems that it's possible to love. In a previous lecture on the sutras, you mentioned that all the forms of love that attach themselves to objects of the world, they are selfish in the sense that we love these things because they're our own. But it's possible to love beauty not because nobody owns it. It's out there, and there's the suspicion that even in this world there are these things that create intuitions, that form our intuitions about the divine. They don't seem random. They don't seem empty or false. Or they seem to be pointing somewhere, in some meaningful. So why is it that we cannot really rely on these intuitions and cultivate them? Why do we have to abandon them, according to this text and others, in order to achieve a true love of God?
No, we don't have to abandon it. If I can separate out beauty from, it's a little bit like when people say, well, we hate the sin, not the sinner, kind of thing. But it sounds great, but it's not always easy to separate out sin from the sinner. It's not always easy to separate out beauty from whatever it is that appears beautiful to us. And if we can manage that separation of that name and form, which reminds me or which triggers that sense of beauty in my heart, then that beauty, as separated from all limiting adjuncts like form and name, that would be one with the divine. It's like, even when you say love, love is a word, but the only way we can understand love is when we see it manifested in some tangible form and name. And again, if we can separate out love from the name and form through which it is being manifested, then that love would be nothing but God. That's the idea.
Akshay, that just to continue what you started, and I have my own version of it, how to cultivate self-love, and it's primarily compassion towards not just everything and everyone around you, but to yourself. But there has to be element of buddhi, discrimination, so you don't go too far with judging yourself for the actions. And what helps a lot is really having this path of devoting all your actions and work to God, which is, very hypothetical, but no matter what is happening on this path, is having compassion, and that what cultivates love within and outside. So that's just my own.
The key term in this really the self, because loving oneself will mean different things to different people depending on what they understand, which self are they referring to. So that's a very key term there, the self. And we will come to that.
Okay.
Yeah. Ashish.
Swamiji, at this stage it feels like it's longing for love of God. Because I don't think, at least in my case, I have the love for God, but it's longing for that love. So the question is really that, so love is not binary, right? It's not that you have it and you don't have it. Is it a gradient? Because I can say truly that I'm not rid myself of hate or prejudice or other, emotions and feelings. But is it so that I cannot really get love of God in how it is meant unless I get rid of all these negative emotions and negative feelings? Only then will I be able to experience that love.
No, that's not the idea. But to the extent I'm able to eliminate the presence of these negativities, they definitely are the one which impede. If those negativities were completely obstructing you, you wouldn't be able to love anything, not just God. Love itself wouldn't have been present in you. The fact that you are able to love, it may not be God right now, but there are other things in this world where you do experience that love in your heart, shows that it's not completely covered. So that's, if that hatred was so filling, then you wouldn't be able to love anyone or anything. So it's there. In fact, these books later on will say that the love that we experience is really nothing but the love that comes from God. It's just that, again, that's where Maya operates. That love seems to get directed to these limited people, places, things around me. But it's really that love for God trying to find an expression. It hasn't yet kind of known itself to be what it is. So that's one way of looking at it. Yeah. But this is good. Longing for the love of God, I like the way you put it, because what it shows is that, first of all, you recognize the value of love for God. And longing, that's what Ramakrishna taught. He used the word vyakulata. The more intense this longing becomes, you will find that intensity of longing itself will remove whatever hurdles there are, and that you will feel it. So the first thing to do is in life, in spiritual life, is to really want something. In fact, that wanting doesn't necessarily have to have only a spiritual goal. Swami Akhandananda, a great disciple of Ramakrishna, used to say, if you want something, and if you really want it like intensely want something, and it could be a very material entity, if you want something very badly, you will get it. That's the law of life. It may not happen according to your timetable, but it will come sooner or later. And of course, easy, not in this life, next life. But it will come. That's what the books say. That if you want something, you will get it. And the next thing the book says, but if you don't want anything, you will get everything. That's the difficult part. And also, we should be, one way God's grace acts in our life is by not always getting what we want. Because oftentimes we don't know what's good for us. And one way God shows love for us, or God's grace acts by, I may want something and if I don't get it, people might get frustrated. I've been trying to get this, but I don't get it. But a bhakta, one who loves God, will see in that process that maybe God doesn't want me to have it. That's a way of looking. There is no way to prove either way, but it's just one way of understanding that would be, maybe God doesn't want me to have it. So it's not, a bhakta doesn't mean a bhakta will not have any desires, but a bhakta will have enough faith in the presence and action of God in his or her life, is to say, well, if I get this, God wanted me to have it. If I don't get something, maybe God didn't want me to have it. There's that story that Sri Ramakrishna used to tell about a person who was a great devotee of Rama, and how everything he saw as the will of Rama. So he, and the story goes, I won't go into all the details, but how once he was kind of arrested by mistake, the police came and took him away, and then of course they released him. And then later on he said, by the will of Rama, they thought I was the thief. By the will of Rama, I was taken there. By the will of Rama, I was released. So the idea is that when this love springs in the heart. When a devotee knows that everything happens through God's will, then your way of seeing everything, the way of interpreting every experience you have in life will be very different. Yeah, so we'll have chances to discuss this further in the subsequent weeks. Om Jananim Saradam Devim Ramakrishnam Jagadgurum Padapadme Tayo Shritva Pranamami Muhurmuhu. On Sunday satsang, our subject will be questions about the world. Next Wednesday, we'll continue with the study of the Narada Bhakti Sutra. And on Tuesday and Saturday, we will have Aarti and meditation as usual. To celebrate this Navaratri, the time sacred to the Divine Mother going on, so we have some sweets for you today after the class. So please have that prasad of the Divine Mother. Let's conclude with a prayer now on page 3. May the Divine Being, who is the Father in heaven of the Christians, Holy One of the Jewish faith, Allah of the Muslims, Buddha of the Buddhists, Tao of the Taoists, Ahura Mazda of the Zoroastrians, the Great Spirit of the Native Americans, and Brahman of the Hindus, lead us from the unreal to the real, from darkness to light, from death to immortality. May we be granted strength, freedom, and clear understanding. May we learn to see God in our own hearts and in everyone around us. May God bless us all and fill our hearts with gratitude, grace, and love. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto all.